Welcome, dear listener, to another episode of Wishcrafting. Today, we are embracing the Wheel of the Year once more and discussing the Winter Solstice Festival of Alban Arthan. So, gather around the hearth, get all warm and cozy, and lean in close because this is gonna be a good one. Alban Arthan is the Welsh name for the winter solstice, and the name that is still used in modern Wicca, Druidry, and other modern pagan practices. The name means light of winter, or sometimes light of Arthur, because in Wales, the Arthurian myth cycle is still a living tradition. Meaning that in Wales, the tale of King Arthur is very much alive. But that's not what the winter solstice is about, or what this feast day is about, not exactly. The festival of Alban Arthan takes place on the winter solstice. So, this year it's on the 21st to the 22nd, and stories vary from tradition to tradition. But at their core, the stories that we tell around this time of the year tell us that the old year is dying and the new year is soon to be reborn. In Druidic tradition, the old sun dies at dusk on the night of the winter solstice, and then the new sun is born at dawn on the morning after, so December 22nd. Wicca, the religion, which began in the 1930s and is inspired by an amalgamation of older traditions, mythologies, and folktales, believes in its own folklore that was created for Wicca specifically, that is told for the winter solstice and the summer solstice, that explains the seasons. And that is the story of the two kings. A mythic duel between two seasonal rulers, the Oak King and the Holly King. They aren't enemies, not really. They're two faces of the same eternal cycle, light and dark, waxing and waning, life taking turns wearing the crown of the world. The Oak King is the spirit of light, growth, fertility, and the green things of the world. A radiant green man figure crowned in oak leaves. His reign begins at the winter solstice, when daylight is reborn, and slowly lengthens back towards summer. The Holly King is the spirit of darkness, winter, introspection, and stillness. He is cloaked in spiky holly leaves and vibrant red berries. He rules from the summer solstice as the sun begins its long descent to be reborn. At each solstice, the tide turns towards the king not currently wearing the crown, and the king wearing the crown hands it over. At the winter solstice, the Oak King rises victorious, bringing back the sun and the promise of life. And at Letha, or summer solstice, the Holly King overtakes him and guides the land into rest and renewal. Their battle is not necessarily a fight to destroy, but a ritual passing of power. One yields so that the other may rise. One rests so that the other can do their work. This myth reminds us that one cannot know light without darkness, and that rest is not an ending, but a necessary growth. The wheel turns, the kings trade crowns, and the world is balanced once again. Traditionally, in Wicca and a couple of other modern pagan practices that have adopted this story is used in ritual theater to bring about all kinds of different things to celebrate the sun, to bid it farewell, to find meaning in the darkness, to do shadow work, all kinds of different things. This myth, this very modern creation, has been used ritualistically in Wicca and Wicca's ceremonial rites to call in to their sacred circles the energy of the solstices, depending on which solstice it was. And if you're wondering where the goddess energy might lie in this story and these rituals, just stay tuned, because she's definitely there. If you don't know the whole story, I highly recommend you do a little search when you have time and read it. It's quite lovely, but I will be talking about that some more. Probably in another episode, because we have a lot to cover today. I do love the solstices, and what I love about the winter solstice and the festival of Alban Arthan specifically is that during these two mystical solstice nights, nature's powers are renewed, and with them, so too are our souls. As the sun's light is reborn, it begins to strengthen and awaken the earth once more. As a person who considers themselves to be deeply in relationship with the earth and the land I live on, this is a very important turning point for me each year, and I can feel it. Just like how at Bealtaine and Samhain we can feel the thinning veil, at this point in the year, for me, the veil feels nearly non-existent. If the veil thins in October, it's damn near completely gone by the solstice. And of course it is. The sun is about to be reborn and come from one world into ours. It is being created. And with it, our souls and the world and the veils that are within and outside of our souls and the world are being reborn. And maybe that sounds poetic to you, but the winter solstice has always inspired poetry within us humans, me and you. Some poetic interpretations of this holiday have linked the name Alban Arthan to King Arthur, syncretizing the sun and King Arthur as a divine hero who dies and who will return when needed. This is a poetic interpretation indeed, but it's very in line with Arthurian legend. If you don't know, Arthurian legends love to compare and syncretize the legendary figure of King Arthur with grandiose symbolism. But in any case, the winter solstice has long been regarded as a moment when the cycle of the year resets. The old year's hardships symbolically die with the fading sun, and then hope is reborn with the new sun's first light. So, Alban Arthan is a winter solstice festival, and I may have led you astray because it is simply the way that in Wales people are talking about celebrating the winter solstice itself. It doesn't have any specific practices or songs or superstitions that go along with the day, as far as I know, with it specifically being called Alban Arthan. But the name Alban Arthan, linking to King Arthur, linking to this heroic cycle of death and rebirth, all bathed in cosmic, spiritual, light kind of energy, and also very grounded energy of the energy that we need to survive with the sun. We have the spiritual light energy of this heroic tale, this magic, this otherworldly figure who can go between realms here and there. The veil is thin, so the light that is coming into our world is not just light of our world, it's also other. And it gives a very mystical feeling to this time of year. But then it has that very grounded, real, tangible experience of being able to witness yourself and feel in your own body the sun and the light growing stronger and returning. So Alban Arthan is its own thing in a way. By giving it that name, the Welsh people are saying, hey, we recognize this energy at this time and we are celebrating that. But Alban Arthan is just one name for this winter solstice festival, for this midwinter celebration. This celebration is likely one of the oldest seasonal celebrations of humankind. In the past, communities were very attuned to the sun's cycles. As the days grew shorter and colder, there was real fear among ancient agrarian societies that the sun might not return. The winter solstice, when the sun halts its southward decline and begins to climb higher again, meant survival, the promise of warmth, light, and crops returning. I think about this a lot and what it might have been like for our ancestors. For our ancestors, the sun's return was literally life or death. So this longest night was met with everything they could throw at it. Great rites, prayers, offerings, everything you can think of to revert the course of the sun and make sure that it was going to be reborn, that it would come back, and that it would rise stronger the next day. This midwinter celebration of light and the returning of the sun is virtually everywhere across the globe. Nearly every culture has honored this turning point of the sun. In the Mediterranean and Middle East, ancient peoples welcomed the rebirth of solar deities at the time and of great darkness alongside them. In the Mediterranean and Middle East, ancient peoples welcomed the rebirth of solar deities at the time of greatest darkness. For example, Persians celebrated the return of Mithras, Egyptians the birth of Horus, and Romans held the feasts of Saturnalia and Sol Invictus around the solstice. Many of these traditions echo the theme of light triumphing over dark. Christmas was eventually set near the solstice, celebrating the birth of Jesus as the light of the world during the darkest time of the year, totally and completely on purpose. Notably, early Christians may have originally observed Jesus' birth in spring, but it was moved to December to align with the solstice festivals that people were refusing to give up. As we very well know, the church was like, okay, if we can't take it away from them, we'll just make it ours. We'll just take that, paint it white, and call it Christian. That's good, right? In Northern Europe, Germanic peoples celebrated Yule, which you've probably heard about, and they would light fires and candles to beckon the sun's return, a custom still very much seen today in holiday lights. But not just holiday lights. There's also so many of the Germanic Yule practices that we are still doing today. Garlands of dried fruits and evergreens and the Christmas tree. It's not just Germanic, but it is a Yule tradition. But perhaps you've heard of a Yule log, where you bring in a very special piece of wood, leave it in your hearth all year, and then at Yule you burn it and you make another, adding in whatever feels right to you, where you're at for the year, and your family's needs. This is a really, really beautiful practice, and it's very prominent across the world, from Scandinavian bonfires to Chinese Dongzi, which means winter festivals, to the Andean Inti Raymi, which happen in the southern hemisphere's winter. humans have always paused to rejoice as the sun reverses its journey and brighter days begin. The urge to celebrate hope and renewal at the solstice is a truly global and timeless experience. In Celtic-influenced folklore and much of modern pagan mythos, the winter solstice is dramatized as that battle we talked about earlier between the two seasonal kings, the Oak King and the Holly King. The Holly King ruling the waning half of the year from midsummer to winter, and at Alban Arthan, he is defeated by his successor, the Oak King, who rules the waxing half of the year, so midwinter or winter solstice to midsummer. We've already talked a little bit about what they symbolize and rule over, but there's just a little bit more I want to share with you before we completely move on. In this folklore, the Holly King is often associated with the wren, which, if you don't know what that is a very ornery, very cute, small, brown bird, often called the King of Winter in some traditions. And the Oak King is associated with the robin, which is a bird that stays through the winter in some places for the most part. Thus, some Druidic rituals speak of the wren being the old year falling to the robin, which is the new year. The wren dies and the robin is reborn. So if you were ever to hear Druidic practitioners or a Druidic podcast or author talking about the wren and the robin, they could be referencing the Oak King or Holly King, or just the winter solstice belief of the old sun dying and the new sun being reborn, and the old year and New Year's following with them. In some parts of Ireland and Britain, Wren Day is celebrated on December 26th, when people used to hunt the wren and parade it around in villages, symbolically marking the end of the old year and the victory of light over darkness. And if that sounds brutal to you, I'm going to do a whole episode on the wren and tell you why people might have been a little annoyed with the wrens back then. And maybe sometimes even now, less now, but definitely back then, because they are basically little gang members, okay? We're just going to leave it at that. We'll talk about them another time, and you're going to learn all about them, both physically and metaphysically. But today is not that day. Today, however, a fake wren is often used in lieu of harming real birds, which I am all for that. No harming real birds. Another key solstice symbol in Druidic lore is the mistletoe. Perhaps you know a little bit about mistletoe. The Druids revered mistletoe, especially when it was found on sacred oaks, as a plant that remained green and bore fruit even in the cold of winter, a sign of life's continuity. Ancient accounts from Pliny the Elder describe Druid priests ritually cutting mistletoe from oak trees with a golden sickle, believing it to have powerful, life-giving properties. Because mistletoe symbolized vitality, and perhaps fertility, because it is an evergreen and was thought to be a potential aphrodisiac. Some legends suggest that this gave rise to the custom of kissing under the mistletoe, which I know you've heard of that one. Sharing a blessing of life during the darkest season of our year. Modern pagan and rural traditions also mirror these ancient practices. People decorate their homes with evergreens, holly, ivy, yew, pine, fir, to invite the spirit of life into our dwellings. These plants, which stay green year-round, they embody rebirth and endurance, which I don't know about you, but I really need that right now because the sads are hitting. Lighting candles or Yule logs, singing songs, and feasting, these are all time-honored ways to make merry and push back the gloom of this time of year. In essence, Alban Arthan and analogous folk celebrations use rich symbolism to remind us that even in the darkest times, life persists and light will return. One of the most extraordinary testaments to how seriously ancient people took the winter solstice is Newgrange in Ireland. Newgrange, which is Brúnaboinne in Irish, it's a massive Neolithic passage tomb, say that 3 times fast, and a ceremonial mound in the Boyne Valley in County Meath. It was built around 3200 BCE, which is over 5,000 years ago, which makes it older than the Great Pyramids in Egypt and older than Stonehenge. This monument consists of huge, and I mean huge, circular earth and stone mounds, about 85 meters in diameter and 13 meters high, covering an acre, and encircled by large standing stones. A narrow 17-meter-long stone passage leads into a central chamber with 3 small side chambers. Archaeologists long thought that Newgrange was just a tomb, due to the fact that cremated human remains have been found there. But now we recognize that it is so much more. Newgrange is essentially a temple designed with remarkable precision to align with the heavens. On Wishcrafting, we're all about aligning ourselves with the heavens, because aligning yourself with the heavens and then aligning yourself with the great below means that your present experience on earth becomes that much more embodied and rich. But back to Newgrange. The defining feature of Newgrange is how deliberate its alignment is to the winter solstice sunrise. The mound's entrance is constructed so that for a few days around the solstice, the rising sun's rays penetrate straight down into the passage, into the heart of the tomb. Uniquely, the builders included a special opening above the doorway that's called the roof box, which allows the light to shine in. Just after dawn on the winter solstice, a beam of light enters this roof box, traverses the entire passage before being blink, snuffed out. By design, this beam of light perfectly illuminates the inner chamber for about 15 to 17 minutes each year. It dramatically lights up the floor, strikes the back wall, exactly where a very large stone is engraved with a triple spiral motif. Newgrange is one of the most precious Stone Age astronomical alignment sites that we have, that we know of, with calculations showing that 5,000 years ago, that sunbeam would have entered exactly at sunrise, at the very moment the first sun rays came over the horizon. And today it's only a few minutes off due to slight changes in the Earth's tilt, but 5,000 years ago it was precise. How incredible is that? That is an incredible feat of engineering, and it indicates that Newgrange's builders deliberately oriented their monument to capture the newborn winter sun. I have chills talking to you about this because it's so incredible. It's so mind-boggling. Why did they do this? The interpretation, shared by many modern Druids and archaeologists, is that Newgrange was built as a place to celebrate and invoke the return of the sun, ensuring the continuity of life. Its precise alignment suggests a ritual purpose that is undeniable. Perhaps at dawn on midwinter, people gathered at this mound to witness the miracle of the sun entering the tomb, symbolizing life penetrating into the darkness. Some have likened it to a solar fertilization of the earth, with the sun's rays seen as a divine spark renewing the womb of the earth goddess. In Druidic poetry, this is described as the sun god's ray inseminating Mother Earth, so that life will grow again in spring. In a sense, Newgrange's yearly solar event is the ultimate rebirth ceremony. When the tomb, which can symbolize the womb or the earth or even the domain of the dead, is flooded with light and life. Amazingly, the solstice secret of Newgrange was lost for millennia and only confirmed in modern times. Local folklore had hinted that once a year, in winter, the sunrise would illuminate the tomb's inner stone, but no living person had seen it. In December 1967, Professor M.J. O'Kelly, who was leading archaeological excavations at Newgrange, decided to test this old tale. On the dawn of December 21st, 1967, O'Kelly stood alone inside the pitch-dark chamber, not knowing if anything would happen. And to his astonishment, at the exact moment of sunrise, a beam of golden light crept in and, quote, lit up everything as it came, end quote. The floor, the walls, the roof, all glowing with sunlight. O'Kelly was, of course, transfixed, and he later admitted that he felt the Dagda, or the sun god of Irish myth, who was said to have built the mound, might be about to collapse the roof on him in anger or awe. But the roof held firm, and the sun retreated, and he walked out knowing that he had witnessed something no one had seen in thousands of years. This dramatic confirmation showed beyond a doubt that Newgrange's Stone Age architects had deliberately aligned this to the winter solstice. O'Kelly went on to observe the event in subsequent years, finding that it occurs annually for several days around December 21st, given that there is a clear sky. The effect inside the chamber is often described as deeply moving, even spiritual. As the amber beam slowly extends into the chamber, then to the very back wall, strikes the triple spiral carving, and makes its way to the roof, one can easily imagine how ancient people might have seen this as a sign from the gods, as them being in communion with them in that moment, in that chamber. In Celtic mythology, Bruneboyne, or Newgrange, was later regarded as a dwelling of the Tuatha De Danann, the godlike ancestral figures of Irish mythology, and specifically as the house of the Dagda and his son. One legend says that Angus, the Dagda's son, was conceived and born at Bruneboyne, reinforcing the theme of birth right there at midwinter. Archaeologists have speculated that when the sun's ray hit the spiral symbol at the back of the tomb, it may have been ritualistically viewed as a doorway opening into the other world. The light could have been thought to allow the souls of the deceased to travel onward or be rejuvenated by the sun. And this is my own personal belief for what this site is and what happens on the winter solstice at Bruneboyne. Another interpretation is that the yearly infusion of sunlight was meant to recharge the spirits of the dead that were entombed there and guide them into the next life. In the words of one museum curator, perhaps they believed the sun's energy would, quote, rejuvenate the dead and guide them into the other world, end quote. This aligns with the Alban Arthan lore that the new sun revives the spiritual forces of the land and its people. Whatever the precise belief, there's no doubt that the winter solstice sunrise was a sacred spectacle for Newgrange's builders, and it remains so for us today as a powerful connection to our ancestors' worldview. Today, the winter solstice continues to be celebrated as a time of community, reflection, and renewal, both in organized gatherings and personal practice. In Ireland, Newgrange itself has become a focal point for solstice celebration once again. Every year, hundreds of people gather outside of the mound in the cold dawn of December 21st, hoping to witness the sunrise. A lucky handful of people chosen by a lottery are allowed inside the chamber to stand in that ancient darkness and watch the sunbeam snake across the stone floor. An experience so popular that it's also live-streamed for the world to see. Even when the clouds thwart the sunlight, people sing, drum, and cheer just to be present at this magical place on the solstice morning. Similarly, at Stonehenge in England, the counterpart for the summer solstice, modern druids and revelers assemble at both solstices to honor the sun. At Alban Arthan, they watch the midwinter sun set in alignment with Newgrange's stones, and at Alban Arthan, which is the summer solstice, they watch the sun rise between the famous trilithons of Stonehenge. These contemporary gatherings show the enduring human desire to mark the solstice in communal, spiritual ways. So if you're here, if you are still with me, if you clicked this because you wanted to learn how to celebrate and embrace the winter solstice just a little bit more deeply, I want you to take a moment right now to tap into the river of time flowing between us. We are doing something that humans, that our ancestors globally have engaged with for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And to me, that means that you and I are on the right path. And I'm so happy to be on it with you, my dear listener. For pagans, Wiccans, Druids, and many others following a nature-based path, Alban Arthan, or Yule, or winter solstice, or whatever else you want to call it, is a high holiday in the wheel of the year. Rituals often include lighting fires that symbolize coaxing the sun back, or retelling these stories like the ones of the Oak King and the Holly King, or reenacting their stories in ceremonial, ritualistic theater, sharing feasts with seasonal foods, meditation and intention setting, and of course, the good old-fashioned gathering is also very, very common. Your work, your capital W work, your meditation, your intention settings, your spells that you craft, whatever you are crafting in your practice, can revolve around the idea of a new sun, which can translate into personal renewal. Many take the time on the solstice to reflect on the past year's darkness or challenges and what the death they might be experiencing could look like, what that could be. And then they set goals or hopes for the new year and the rebirth of their light. Because Alban Arthan is about hope. It's about rebirth. And it's an ideal moment for inner work. Even those not involved in pagan traditions often intuitively do something special at this time, gathering with family, lighting the long nights with strings of lights and candles, exchanging gifts as tokens of goodwill, and warming the home with evergreens and joy, and just embracing the energy of cheer and goodwill and friendship and giving. These Christmas and New Year's traditions are rooted deeply in the winter solstice celebrations of celebrating and embracing the solstice itself. In a sense, the spirit of Alban Arthan is alive and well in modern culture. Whether one is attending a druidic ceremony at Newgrange or simply curling up by the fireplace reflecting on the new year. The winter solstice invites you to slow down and appreciate the cycle of rest and renewal. It teaches the lesson that darkness is cyclical and not permanent. The sun will return and light will grow. This can be a powerful metaphor for our own lives. We all go through dark times. But Alban Arthan reminds us to have faith in the returning light and to find that spark of hope and rebirth within ourselves as the new sun rises on December 22nd and illuminates the ancient chamber of Newgrange and the hearts of the people worldwide. It also carries a timeless promise. As the new sun rises on the 22nd of December, illuminating the ancient chamber of Brunaboyna, Newgrange, and the hearts of people worldwide, it carries a timeless promise that no matter how long or cold the night, the light of renewal emerges always. Embrace that promise. Let the returning light rejuvenate your own spirit, because you deserve it, because you might need it, and because this is one of the most simple and ancient magics of all time. You embrace the winter solstice by letting its energy, letting its light, its literal light that you can actually go and feel the difference in the day of the 21st and the day of the 22nd, because it literally gets longer and your body reacts to that. This is one of those days where you can go and tap into this primordial magic that we are all hardwired to understand. And I love that for us. I really do. That's all I have for you for this episode. If you are interested in some winter solstice journal prompts that you can download or do on your tablet, or that you can print off to have in your grimoire or journal for an analog hard copy, please pop over to my Patreon, where that will be there for $1, just one little dollar. And I hope that this winter solstice treats you well. The winter solstice is one of my absolute favorite times of year because of the way the light feels. And I hope that you feel it too. And I hope that the absolute mind-blowing wonder of Newgrange gave you a smile. And I hope you go look that up. And perhaps you can live stream the first rays of sun hitting the magical portal and see how that makes you feel. That's what I'm going to be doing. Thanks for listening. My name is Wishamaya. Sometimes I ramble on, but hopefully you liked this episode, because I liked giving it to you. Until next time, don't forget to keep your roots deep and your dreams wild. I'm going to go ahead and apologize because this episode might be a little rambly because I'm very excited to share it with you, and I have some notes but no script. So let's just get right into it because I have a lot to share with you today.